are live with the beautiful and awesome Julie Cuccia-Watts. That is how you pronounce?
That's perfect.
Awesome. Just gonna give it a few moments because YouTube hasn't been sending out our notifications.
Well, and also takes a little bit of time, the delay. There's a delay.
Hi, Maria. Hi, Gigi. Welcome.
Gigi made it. Gigi and I were talking till wee hours in the morning for her last night.
Awesome.
Chatting. Okay. I'm not seeing any comments yet. Maybe. Okay. Oh, yeah. There's Gigi.
Hi, Rochelle.
There's Rochelle. Lady Knight of Avalon.
Maria.
I have to watch all Amber's shows so that I know who everyone is.
Good way. It's a good way.
I've given up Netflix. I'm just watching Amber now.
I love it. Lady Blind Wolf. Thank you. Yes, guys. Sorry. Please, I don't usually come on in my ritual makeup, but I have one.
I have pictures of me like that, actually.
Oh, I'd love to see it sometime. Lady Capra and William, hello. So glad you guys came for this. I'm so excited. And again, thank you, Julie. And yes, I'd love to see that picture, actually.
I can do that. I'll find it later.
So I guess we shall begin if you're ready.
Sure.
So we all want to see it. Thank you. I'm so secretive about the weirdest things, though. Like, this is an exposure for me. I'm like, Peter, hello, welcome, and Robin, welcome. Alrighty, so do you have YouTube and your website or other platforms you would like to mention?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I have my website. I have an very antiquated blog from a way long time ago that I never used, but it's still out there. It's really old. What else do I have? Oh, and I'm on Twitter occasionally. I just share my Instagram with Twitter every day. And I have 4 pages on Facebook and 1 group. And
awesome.
It keeps me busy.
Hi, Lewis. Welcome. And the second question is your sun, moon, and rising. I know you had told me all 3, but you can share whichever you would like.
Well, my real sky, my Western astrology that I thought that I was up until 2009. I was a Scorpio with an Aquarius moon and a Taurus rising. So then I was introduced to real sky and realized I have a Libra sun and a Capricorn moon and an Aries rising. But when I had my Vedic astrology done, I found out I'm an Aries with a Capricorn moon and a Scorpio sun, which I just couldn't understand. So, but what am I? I don't know. I guess I'm a Libra sun. I guess I can see that since I did name a tarot deck Mahat after the goddess of like universal law and balance, and probably the original scales. So I had to admit that, yeah, I can take both sides of an issue and I can see both sides, and that scales can be rather unsettling, and you have to stay balanced. You have to put a little bit on either side to stay balanced.
I think I'm going through that. Something funny is when you first found out you were a Libra, were you upset?
I was
I,
totally upset. I was totally pissed off. Totally. You were pissed off too.
I didn't want to hear it. I was like, mm-mm, don't
Yeah.
come at me with that. In Vedic and in Western, I'm Scorpio, Scorpio, Scorpio. Like, in all, I'm like, no, I'm proud of, nope, don't you come in here with that reality.
Messes
And then,
with your like vibe, right? Like, your mysterious vibe is totally wrecked by all of the stereotypes of Libra, though. I mean, really, those are all stereotypes, because when you really look at Libra as Mahat, as the goddess of balance and universal law, and the one who decides whether a heart is um, light or whether it should be thrown to the monster to be eaten. Yeah, I can get into that.
I could too. I
I can
like that. So yeah, now I'm like, okay, I've heard enough from Rochelle where I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
you down.
I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm willing. I'm willing.
Yeah.
So I love that. Um, 3, you are a tarot creator of multiple decks. I know I'm waiting to get my hands on them. That's going to be on my next agenda. But I asked, which was the most challenging deck that you created as part A to this question?
Yeah. Well, they were all challenging in their own way. Because when you're doing decks, when you're doing a painting of an image, you are like invoking that. Um, you're invoking that energy. And I can remember working on Ancestral Path as my first deck. And I actually did like 20, almost 10 faces on Grandmother Moon before I realized it was about I wasn't going to do 28 faces, basically. And I had done Grandfather Thunder, the painting before, and the house was just like, it was there was like angst in the house, and it wasn't until I finished the moon that things settled down. When Grandmother Moon was done, it balanced out Grandfather Thunder, and it was like, wow, am I going to have to deal with all the energy from each one of these paintings every time I do it? The answer is yes. Yes. Every painting, you go through the entire thing. And so when people say, "You're going to do another deck?" Like, no, I don't want to, because I don't want to invite all that in my house because it's traumatic. You know,
Yeah.
you do the tower, and the first time when I was doing the tower for the blue moon, we were in the middle of house construction, and they were literally taking, things off my house. My house was being demolished in places to be built up again. And I was like, this is just a little too real. I mean, it just gets a little too real.
Yeah. So you're like very in tune then energetically, like when you're doing your work, like you're submerged kind of like in that reality on top of yours.
I was working on one, I think it was Journey into Egypt, the nine of coins, which is like a symbiotic relationship between animals and people, and like a symbiotic relationship. So I hear this high pitched squeaking in the living room, and I realized that my cat has brought a little baby mouse up from the basement. And I'm like, should I stop her? Do I need to stop? And then I think, I don't have a mouse in my house. Nature's going to have to take its course here. And I thought, okay, how does this work into the symbolism of this painting? And it's like, yeah, the symbiotic relationship between me and my cat, and taking care of the vermin that might be in my basement. And I just have to let nature deal with nature. And I cleaned up the mess later, but yeah, that was like, it manifests all around me, crazy, all the
That
time.
is awesome. Um, yeah, did your cat leave you the mouse? I used to have one that would.
Played with it for quite a long time, but it was just a little pinky, so I don't know what happened to it. I think she might have ate it, but whatever.
I love it. I love cats. Like, they can do no wrong in my eyes, even when they're being the worst. I'm just like, I love you, queen. The second question, well, part B, was which is the first deck you created?
Yeah, Ancestral Path. I did do some like early 1983. I did a couple of watercolors where I was working with tarot images, but the watercolor didn't really work out very well because it fades really easy. So though that, and I was way too busy. I had a like a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 3-year-old boy, and I wasn't going to be able to get anything done, and I had to go to work, and there was no time for like studying tarot. So
Right.
when my second son was born, I was home with him, and that was in 1987. So by 1988, I had a little bit of time during nap time where I could do some painting or do some sketching or do some research. And um, so I dove in. Like having any kind of time at all was like such a big luxury, and I dove in. And the first year I did 15 paintings, and the second
Wow.
year, after I realized that I would probably get published, I did 64 paintings in 1 year with a toddler. So we watched a lot of TV. We watched The Never Ending Story quite a lot, and
Kudos to you.
and he learned how to run a VCR, and I got my work done. And when he would go to bed at night, I would do another sketch and start the next day.
We have a lot of comments tonight, so I just want to make sure I'm not missing like anybody's questions if they're having any for you. Just take a moment.
Peterson.
And hi, Abby, and everybody joining us, and Todd. Thank you. Okay. We became, oh, cool. I was just reading Peter's comment there. Yeah, I mean, that story, I love that so much. Like the reality thing, like when you paint and all that was happening with you.
Yeah, like
Awesome.
you'd think it would just be peaceful and you just work on your project, but no.
When you have certain gifts, though, the universe, like,
Portal. And people who worked with my paintings know that they're a portal. And I used to travel around with my big blue moon. My blue moon deck, which was my second deck after Ancestral Path, was actually 3 foot by 4 foot paintings. And I would take those with me, 22. It was just a majors only deck, but the big 22 canvases I would take with me and do workshops where people could drum and I would play music and we would journey, like do a shamanic journey into a painting. I'd let them choose a painting and then I would, describe the paintings and then let them journey into, and then when they would come back, then they get to share if they felt like it. And it was a good class. And people could dance or they could just journey or they could do whatever they wanted with the paintings. And people got really good stuff.
I would love that. Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
But it got to be too much to be dragging giant paintings around and they'd
can
slide
imagine.
around and then would have to, it was just exhausting. Come home to my 3 kids and after a weekend of doing lecture and doing vending or whatever, it was
Oh,
just
yeah.
a lot.
I don't blame you. Yeah, I could see how that could be overwhelming. I was watching one of your videos and you were kind of telling a story about a reading you had during the summer solstice.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and a little bit about that in your dream. I found that really neat and interesting, and I loved the video you presented on your channel of like that experience. So could we touch on that?
Yeah, that 2009, and I had just returned from Egypt in 2009 in April, and by summer solstice, we were at PSG, which is the Pagan Spirit Gathering, put on by Selena Fox, and it's a huge, big encampment of pagans that all hang out together, right? So when you're part of this, you have to either volunteer for work or you have to do a class or something. And I volunteered to do a tarot class. And the day that I was scheduled, the time I was outdoors, and I had all this paper that I had with me for worksheets or whatever we were doing. I can't even remember what the class was about. It was gushing rain and a huge thunderstorm, and I had no shelter. So all my papers just melted. And there was a woman in the crowd, and she's holding an umbrella, and she hands me the umbrella
Aw.
so I can teach my class. And finally, I just go, you guys, this isn't working. We're going to have to just close it up and I'm going to cancel. But then she and I started talking, and her name is Lori Mans, and we connected like right away. I like recognized her. She reminded me of someone who I knew from a long time ago, who was one of my best friends, and there was something about her face that reminded me of her. And um, so she asked me, she was with her husband, and she said, I'm a reader, but I can't read for him. Could you read for him? And I said, sure. And I said, well, how about you do a reading for my husband? I'll do a reading for your husband. So we exchanged readings. And then later on that night, she came back and she said, Julie, I'm getting a download. And I think this is the most important reading I've ever done. And she said she just started downloading this whole scene where she said, you're going to do another tarot deck. And it's going to be the biggest thing that you've ever done. And she said, and I'm seeing this dial. And she said, what do you have in the back of your book? And I looked at the book and I gave it to her, and on the back was the wheel of the year with all the cards. And she says, it's like this, but there's puzzle pieces that go together, and you've got to find all these puzzle pieces to go together. She said, this really has to come out. And I thought, it's already out. I mean, this deck is already out. I don't understand. I mean, I didn't feel like there was another deck, even though I had already been given the information that Western astrology was rubbish, according to Robert Bauble. And I knew in the back of my mind that Western astrology wasn't really going to work for me. So in the back of my mind, I knew that I was totally in denial about it, right? So she told me a lot of stuff about, puzzle pieces and things and that these paintings are going to be really important, and that they would go to Egypt, and that I would be going back to Egypt. And that still hasn't happened. But the painting, started downloading in a dream I had, like, I think shortly after that, because I had an injury with my leg, and I went to see a massage therapist about it. So I hadn't had a massage in a really long time. So I got this massage. It was an eclipse. It was a new moon. And then that night, everything downloaded. Like, I saw painting and painting and painting and painting and painting. And then my neighbor flags me down. She goes, Julie, what are you doing? What are you working on now? She said, because last night I had a dream that you were showing me all these paintings, and you were showing me them so fast that I couldn't even see one after another. And I was like, oh my God, Laura, that is exactly what I dreamed. And she said, well, it was really intense because it must have flowed right down the street. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to do another tarot deck? And then I posted that on Facebook. And my favorite author, Norman D. Ellis, who was on my first uh, trip to Egypt, um, she wrote, why wouldn't you? And then I was like, why wouldn't I? And I was like, okay, I'm doing it. So I announced a month later that I was going to start this tarot deck. And in August, I started it. And it took me till 2013 to get it done. So from 2009 to 2013, I completely devoted myself to painting all the paintings and writing the book. And and getting all of this manifested. And
Right.
it was a big deal. And it was part, Lori played a part in that. And it was
Well,
a big deal.
thank you. Well, that is so awesome. I love your experiences. Oh my gosh. So I think in this moment here too, you just did something for me, like Western. I think I'm gonna, and the reason for that is I was just telling Rochelle about a week or two ago. I keep getting images of dials in my head when it comes to astrology. When I was kind of going crazy, racking my head over it all. Well, you in this, your experience, I don't believe in coincidences, so I
Oh,
think
neither
it's
do
kind
I.
of a direction like, hey.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, thank
Well,
you.
and when I did journey, I really just thought that I would just be shifting from one sign to another, and that I'd still be doing moon phases, but
Right.
then I discovered that the calendar of ancient Egypt was 12 months divided into 30 days with 10-day weeks within each month, which is just
Oh,
exactly like a horoscope. That is
right.
the division of a horoscope. And if you look at the horoscope, the the eastern horizon is in where our compass points would say west. So you're actually facing south instead of looking north on the traditional European compass points. So the astrology wheel was a huge clue to me that this indeed is from Egypt. And all of these signs are from Egypt. These are all the Egyptian gods, and they're not divided boy, girl order. They're divided feminine and then kind of like um, joined with sort of androgynous signs into the masculine signs. And it's like one half of the world is Nut, and one half of the signs are Nut, and then one half of the signs are Geb, like the earth god. And I just saw that, just like it just hit me like, and that wasn't information that I got from, I got it from Egypt, but it wasn't like, okay, this is the real sky astrology and these are the signs. No, no, no. This was all like, you know what? These symbols I'm seeing here, they remind me of the mythologies that I've already learned about. And I'm seeing Selkit. I'm seeing Scorpio as Selkit, and I'm seeing the scales as Mahat, and I'm seeing the woman with the sistrum as Hether, and that's Virgo. And I'm seeing all of these things in the glyphs that were there at the Dendera temple. And I'm,
Wow.
I'm seeing this, and no one's doing this. And let's just try this. Let's make an experiment, which I just did it as an experiment just to see, well, will this work? And
Right.
and and in fact, it does work. So,
That's
sometimes
amazing
you just gotta
stuff.
take a leap, and you just gotta see if it just experiment. That's what everything comes from, just nothing. And, you're just taking bits and pieces from all over and kind of connecting the dots. It's just what I think female brains do. We kind of
Yeah.
make the relationship. How does this relate to that? And we just connect the dots so we can see the bigger whole and understand cause and effect. And that's, pretty much what I did.
And if you guys want to kind of see on her channel, it will be in the description at the time it's uploaded. Make sure you check it out. She does have a video on there, and she kind of gives you a little visual of what she just talked about, like in her dream. And I just thought that was awesome.
Yeah, that
So,
was my lecture from the BATS conference in, I think it's 2013, right after Journey came out. And I was lucky enough to have it filmed. So we translated it into a YouTube, and it's immortalized. And I still get like comments on it like years later, like that it helped people to understand where I was coming from.
wow.
And, yeah. So, one correction just leads to another correction. So after Journey was out, and I still felt like I needed to do something astrological. Journey was more of a historical overview with mythology, and I really got into the characters historically. Um, it wasn't really about the astrology, it was more about the personalities of the
Right.
Aryan age, of the age of Aries, and the cause and effect that has brought us to the place that we are. And and so I really felt like I had this other pending project, and I thought it was a book, and then I thought it was an app, and I sat down in 2019 with two of my friends, and we talked about like, what do I need to do with this? Like, my friend Lisa Sandow said, you should make it, you should get an app. Let's find out how to make an app. You need to have some kind of astronomy app so people can find out what their chart is. And I looked into that. It was $30,000 to make an app.
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
I don't have that. I can't do that. So um, I had another dream in the middle. Started the Facebook page for Real Sky. Just started doing forecasts every day, and um, then I had a dream as I was working on a 2020 day planner, which would have been a big mistake. So this dream was about the chariot being the scarab as the original Cancer sign. And I dreamed that the scarab was the chariot, and I was like, "Oh, that makes so much sense that Kepra would be the chariot." And I'm starting to line up different things for different signs, and all of a sudden I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing another tarot deck. This is how I'm gonna present this in a very astrological way. I'm going to do a tarot deck based on real sky astrology, based on signs." And then I just started making the outline, and pretty soon I was collecting pictures. But I was babysitting for my grandchildren, and I didn't want to get all the paints out because you know, oil paint is really toxic and it's really messy. And if you have a whole bunch of paintings around, so what I decided to do was to do my very first digital deck. And I had so many paintings, so many files of paintings from all the years of doing paintings that I decided to just take little snips and bits out of the other paintings and put them together in collage form and create imagery. And so I
Ooh.
did my first digital deck with Real Sky, and it started in the summer of 2019. And as we got into the pandemic, people are like, "You got to get this done. You got to work this out. You got to get this done. You need it. We need it because we're all cooped up when we need it." So I really didn't have to babysit because the kids are all quarantined and we were quarantined. So I just focused every day, all day until it was done. And then I worked on the workbook every day, all day till it was done. Peter edited and we just got it out and it was done. And then it was done. So
You're like, yes, done.
I know, think you're done. And then there's some other thing that happens. But yeah, it's a process.
Oh, I can imagine, but so well done, though, Julie. Great admirer of your work and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so I know you've had some visits to Egypt, and I want to ask you about your experience there. But a bit before we get into that, I did see on Rochelle's channel an interview you did there where you talked a bit about your childhood and the books that you read and like the cat story and a bit about that. I thought maybe give a bit of your background with Egypt before you went, and then we could talk about.
Yeah, it was just sort of a spontaneous. I can't even really remember the original, like how I felt connected to Egypt. I had a best friend, and we met each other in kindergarten, and we were both really interested in. We wanted to be archaeologists when we grew up. You know who you are when before you get your eggs, right? Um, and she and I were really like into this stuff, and we would talk about stuff, and I remember having this really intense dream in kindergarten about walking down this road, and I was pretty sure it was Egypt, and it seemed like Egypt. And I was walking down this road, and suddenly I saw these Romans in my path, and I could feel the dread. I mean, I was not a little girl in my dream. I was a grown person, and I could feel the panic and dread, and I had to be shuffled away to get away from these Romans. And it was kind of violent and like discombobulating. And I remember just waking up and telling her about that dream. And it was just like it was just the way that she and I connected. Because she understood what I was talking about when no other adults would listen to me. My friend did listen to me. Um, you know, I and then she and I would always race to the shelves whenever there were new Egyptian books, and that's when the cat story came about. Um, but I've always just been like, I love the Egyptian stuff. It just feels like home to me. And I I used to dress my Barbie in Egyptian things. I don't know.
Oh,
I
I
could
love
wear
that.
makeup. Halloween was my favorite time because I could wear the eye makeup. It was the only time I felt normal. I don't know, just a weird little kid. I mean, just a weird little kid.
I love it. It's funny, Rochelle and I actually were talking not long ago. We wanted to be archaeologists as kids too. I was obsessed with like Tomb Raider, but it really, I remember going through an Egypt phase. I think what's awesome about that is, I don't know, I kind of have a theory about like past life stuff and like maybe memories or whatnot. So I just find it interesting when children are like so closely, mesmerized by like other cultures or other things, and I'm like, huh, well, maybe.
I remember having pajamas that were kind of like a Greek gown, and I remember wearing them and going, "This is like a Greek gown. This is a Greek gown." And I'd jump on the bed and I'd be like, "I'm wearing the Greek gown." But,
I
I
love
think I
that.
always just knew I just knew time periods and costuming. For whatever reason, I could pinpoint a costume, and I remember in my early 20s, if I would meet someone, I'd go, "I'm you were a Viking. Were you a Viking?" And they'd go, "Oh, how would you know that?" And I'm like, "I can just see it." I mean, sometimes I could just see what they were wearing. I could just see them in whatever their costume was. And I don't think I can do that as well as I used to be able to, but back in the day, I could just see right through people, like, what their time period was.
Wow.
I was a strange person for the '80s.
You're a beautiful oh my gosh,
When
like,
everyone else was spiking their hair and painting it blue and getting into punk rock, I was like, "Oh, you were a Viking in a past life."
I love that.
I was weird, Julie.
I love that. I think though, and that's part of why I love this like deep diving series, pulling those things out in people individually that makes you so beautiful, that makes you stand out. I love bringing light to that. So thank you so much. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm not
Um,
embarrassed by it anymore.
so what was it like stepping into Egypt for the first time?
Oh,
How was that experience?
I was strangely like, the air was right, and there's no other way to, describe it except when I walked we walked out of the Cairo airport onto the like, where we was gonna get picked up, and the sun was really high, because it was November, and in Wisconsin, the November sun is very low already, and the sun was so high, and it was warm, and it was, like, dry, it wasn't humid like it is here, and it just felt good. It just felt like, "Wow, this is great," and I was so excited to be there. I couldn't believe it. It was just
Oh.
exciting. It was really cool, and I was afraid that I would feel, like, like Egypt was dead and it was all gone, and these are all ruined, and I thought it would be sad, but it was not ruined. It was so alive, and it was the first place that I ever saw things when I was awake. I would
Wow.
see things. I was like in the train and I could feel, like, I felt like it was snakes like going up and down my legs. And I
Really?
saw this face of this person, and I couldn't even say whether it was a male or a female, but it was kind of a wide face with a bald head just kind of looking at me. And we slept our first night in a hotel. The first night we slept on the train going south and getting to Aswan. And we slept the second night on the island of Philae, or not, the island of Elephantine, because we were going to Philae in the morning. And that night, that morning, as I woke up, there was a woman in white standing at the foot of my bed. And I was like, holy crap, this is so real here.
Oh, I got chills.
And it was alive. Everything was alive and real and like amazing. It was amazing. And well, the one thing that was really important is, like, when I would journey, like through the 1980s, I would journey and I would always have this little black cat with me. It would sometimes be little, it would sometimes be a panther, it would sometimes, but it was with me. It was like a guardian
Um,
spirit or an animal totem. And um, when we went to Karnak Temple in Luxor, we went to the place called the Temple of Ptah, and in there was a granite statue of Sekhmet. And I never really felt like a connection to Sekhmet. But when I stood in front of this black granite statue, and everyone else was, we go in one at a time, we would go in one at a time. Everyone else would come out crying and sobbing. And I walked in and went, oh my God, it's you. You're the black cat. You're the one. And I was like, hey, I did what you wanted. I want my life back. I was like, all right, I want my life back now. I've served you, and now I want my life back. Well, you don't say that to Sekhmet. I got my ass kicked in the next like 2 years, and there was some really intense stuff that happened. Like a lot of fold over stuff from when I was 21 happened, and there was, I learned a lot about Saturn,
wow.
because my Saturn returned for the age of 21 when my spiritual doors got opened. That Saturn returned, and I definitely had my spiritual doors opened again and did
Wow.
the journey into Egypt. And it was a very intense time. And my teacher died like within that period. So,
Really?
like,
Mm.
it was very, very intense. Yeah.
Oh, I got chills. I love it. Oh,
I learned a lot
I'm
about Saturn and Saturn patterns, and I definitely applied that to my work and helped people to understand that every year you're going to have a Saturn pattern, not just when you
oh,
hit a, a birthday or in 28 years from your birthday. Yes, that's big. It's huge structure, but every year you can go back 7 years, 14 years, 21 years. You can go back to that pattern and you can see how you play a different role in the same theme, and you kind of get a gauge for what's happening next or what's happening right now or what am I working on. It's a really good gauge for that. So Saturn, I really appreciate Saturn. um,
wow.
it's a really important planet.
And again, that makes sense to me on why you would like receive so much, like with Saturn, like Father Time, and then the dials and like the symbolism in that. Like that
it's,
makes sense to me.
it's life patterns, and if you dread it because you've made bad choices and you're going to have to get
Right.
kicked again by whatever. Um, it's about you. I mean, and I don't think you really see it until you hit 49, because I don't think you can really be cognizant of it. Because at age 7, when you break out of, you're really going to school now, and your social starts being more important than your parents. It's when your friends start becoming more important. And then when you're 14, you go to adolescence and you start coming into puberty and then that repeats again at 42 as you're going out of your fertility. So, I mean, there's this pattern of life, but until you get to be like 42 or 49, you don't really get that punch of that. And now I just look to see where Saturn was and when the square happens, and I just look at it again. I just, okay, when was the last time Saturn was here? And I'm like, okay, last time Saturn was here, I was having a baby. So, you know, that's where it is right now. It's like I'm having a baby. And then all the stuff with my decks, is happening again. And that was when I signed my contract with US Games. And that was, it's all coming back. All the decks are coming back. And it's very, very telling. And I've done this with other people, so it's not just me, it's other people too. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
Wow. What is one of the first temples that you visited, and were there any others that you also visited? And
Oh yeah, we went the first temple that we visited when we were in Cairo, and then we went to Saqqara that night. We came in, and at sunset we went to Saqqara, which is like the step pyramid and a big complex, and it's Normandy Ellis's favorite place. It's where they would have this the said head said festivals, festivals. It was like the Jubilee, so like the pharaoh would have to prove that they were worthy of keeping their pharaohship, and they would have to go through like strenuous um, uh, things, like run marathons, and they would probably have some kind of ritual drink that they would drink, and they would go into the tomb and they would do journey work. So um, this was a really important place, and we had to put an offering in in a space in these little ruined places, and then we went down into the step pyramid and we did a journey down there, and we all, like my friends and I, just started to laugh because they told us to bring a blanket, right? So in my pocket, I had this mylar blanket. It was all like folded nice and neat, right? And I thought, oh, I'm just going to use this blanket and lay it down on the ground. So I'm opening up this mylar and it's crinkly and it's shiny and I'm laying it down. And my friend Gina just starts to laugh. And the head of this group was Nikki Scully, and she's like, "The dust of Egypt just brushes off. You don't have to put down a blanket." And I'm continuing to put the blanket down, and my other friend Tammy is like, "Where's my Marlar blanket? Do I get one too?" We just started to laugh, and it was like the earth energy bubbling up, like making us laugh, and we couldn't be serious. It was so bad. And it was so powerful. But after that, like years later, I learned about the Fey energy that bubbles up from the earth and makes you laugh. And we were totally in it. And that happened so much in Egypt with us. We just couldn't stop laughing because things were just funny. And I probably look like a babbling idiot because we laughed at everything. And then at the end, I couldn't fold the mylar blanket up again because once you've
oh,
unfolded
no.
the mylar, you can't. So I gave it to this guard that was at the Saqqara temple, and he was like, "Is this for me?" I'm like, "Yeah." I mean, he was like so happy to get it, and I
Aw.
just wanted to get rid of it because it was crinkly and loud, and I couldn't fold it up anymore. And we just died laughing. And they were saying like, "Oh, you must have given him a marriage present, and now he's gonna want to marry you because you've given him the sacred mylar from the pyramid." And oh my God, we laughed so hard.
No. That
Ridiculous.
is a awesome story.
Uh,
I love it so much.
I think
Um,
our tour guide really appreciated me very much that night. But yeah.
so what was the best thing you saw in Egypt in your opinion?
Well, of course,
Unless,
Hatshepsut's mortuary temple was my, like, because I had that vision of being there when I was 21, 22 in 1981, and to actually be there and to feel it and to know that everything was to scale as I remembered it and to just actually be there. I mean, I feel like my soul was there all the time because I would
Right.
remember that journey like it was yesterday, and still I do. Um, so I could never spend enough time there because it was always too short. And we were there for 45 minutes and then we had to go. But while we were there, our tour guide, Emil Shaker, is pointing up to the hill where I had the vantage point where I was. And he says, Hatshepsut had a daughter that was buried up there. And he's pointing to right where I was showing Gina where I was standing or where I had this experience. And Gina's eyes got really big and my eyes got really big because I'd never heard of that Hatshepsut had a daughter. I just knew that this was her mortuary temple and
Wow.
that it had been ruined until 1960 and then it was rebuilt. And, that's what the information that I could find. And it took a long time to find that information. And I didn't even know if there was a cliff for a really long time. And I didn't even know if there were tombs up there or what was
Right.
up there. And Gina was like, her eyes bugged out, my eyes bugged out. I was like, holy cow, now I've got someone else to research. So I had this daughter to research. And apparently she died at a really young age, like 18 or 19 or something, and never married, or I don't think she married. And she was supposed to get married, but she never did, or something. And
Wow.
so, like, did she like die and then did she like journey and come into me? Did I get pulled out? And did I go and journey there? Was I shown that? Because I was in her body. I was in a little brown body and
Wow.
with long, long hair, and I was naked and I was laying out on this granite slab that had a mattress on it. And Gina turned to me and she goes, Julie, the girl was dead. The girl that you painted about, she was dead. And I was like, she seemed pretty alive to me, because I was in her body
Right.
and we flew out over the water and I was holding the black cat and it seemed pretty real to me. You know.
I love that. See, in my practice, I do something called dream walking. And I feel like if we can step into somebody else's psychological dream realm state, then I'd be willing to bet it's possible that you could have, somehow inserted or had that experience like through her eyes. That's
Yeah,
so interesting.
it was really like there were layers of it too. Like when I came back, I could
Wow.
hear a thunderstorm while I could see a thunderstorm in the distance when I was there, but when I came back,
Was she
I was
into you?
paralyzed, sleeping on the couch, and it was thundering really hard outside. I could hear the thunder. The cat was still on my stomach, meowing at me. And then when I woke up again, I could move, and the thunderstorm was still happening outside. Well, years later, I had this like dream about that happening where I saw
Right.
myself on the couch. I saw a UFO out in the front yard creating the thunderstorm and whatever the vortex was that sent me back to that time period.
Wow.
And I watched it through this other dream. So there was like me in three places, So it was just really weird and so many
Wow.
things I don't understand. Um, like what really did happen? I don't know. And the place where this happened in my parents' house was like right where my father passed away this August. So
Wow.
like there is definitely a portal there. And so I know it's just really interesting stuff.
Very. I got chills again. I've got chills so many
I've
times
I've
during this
been chilling
one.
for 2 days now since I did Ambers, and last night it was chilly and, like, I had to sit out in the sun before I did this because I couldn't stop being cold.
Oh, man. Could I just be selfish and keep you here with me for like hours so you can
Sure.
keep telling me your stories? No.
Let's keep talking.
I love it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, the next story was about, or story, sorry guys, question was about your paranormal experiences. I know you've had a lot of those, kind of your whole life.
Like,
Are there
what's
any?
paranormal about my life? Right.
Yeah.
Um, I guess like my first paranormal experience, I suppose, would be um, the flying around in the blue light with when I was a baby, like really little. And I remember being really little because I was potty trained when I was 1, because I'm a 50s baby, right? And all the mothers potty trained their kids by the time they were 1. So this is a memory from when I had plastic pants. And I would fly around at night. But then when I was put in the big bed, when I had my own bedroom, I would hear the sound of bump, 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 footsteps coming up the stairs. But they didn't. But the thing was that they never really reached the top of the stairs. But when that bump, 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 bump would happen, I would feel this electrical feeling. Like if I would move, it would get really intense, or I would feel people touching me on my leg, and then it would just be this weird experience. And sometimes I would see people or I would see things, and it was just scary. And my sister, I know it happened to her too, because she would say, if you stay really still, it won't electrocute you. Like, so it was happening to her. But then when I did get into the Native American stuff in my 20s, I realized and had many out of body experiences where I'm feeling like that was a drum. And there was one out of body experience I had where I walked with this woman wanted to show me something. She was a Native woman and she was in my parents' backyard. And she said, "Come with me." And I followed her and she was showing me where this antique barn had been when I was really little that got moved. And in that space, there was grandfathers around a fire. And I was trying to hear them talk, but she was buzzing so loud, like this electrical buzz, that I couldn't hear what they were saying. And so I felt like I missed the message. But really, I think the message was that there was a council fire here, and the sounds that you were hearing were drums. And the drum was creating the energy so that the people would wake me up or whatever. But later, what I found out was the people who built my parents' house, who lived behind us, were into the occult. And Caroline Moore and Harry Moore were a childless couple who built 3 houses, and one of them was my parents' house. And they were like, Caroline couldn't have children because she was hit by a car when she was a kid. And when she
Oh,
was hit by a car, she left her body. And from that moment, she knew that there was other world. She knew that there was another world. And then when she came back, she was never the same again. She was injured for one, but she knew there were other levels. And she got into the occult in the 1940s. And her husband was in World War II and he was a
wow.
soldier. And they saw UFOs. And she contacted me when she heard that Ancestral Path had come out. I had a big spread in the newspaper, so she called me and she wanted to talk to me. So I went over and talked to her, and that like filled in a bunch of gaps for me. They had been opening portals, and that was what I was getting sucked into when I was a kid. And I was sensitive, and I know my mother was sensitive too. She used to say that she would see people looking in the windows and thinking they were going to steal her children. And I think that they were just people from other dimensions who were living in the same space. And I just happened to get, tapped into it. And they realized that I could see them. So they were kind of training me. And it was probably a good thing that I really didn't connect with Caroline at a young age because the information she had was really bizarre. With the 1940s information was really bizarre. She gave me a few books, and I was like, this is really weird stuff. Not really grounded, or it was very, I don't know, very white culture. I didn't really like.
Mm.
So yeah, like
Wow.
1940s Fate magazines, and just like mm, not not really very good. I
To
was
go
better,
back in time.
yeah, I was better on my own. Um,
Right.
but we all had to come from somewhere, right?
Oh, yeah.
That information, what we each
Wow.
generation kind of gets a little more information, and based on what we can find out scientifically, or but
Oh, yeah. My kids are way more like evolved than what I was at their age, in my opinion. It's
oh, they have
interesting.
so much more information that they can, you
And
know,
they know it.
yeah,
Like sometimes my oldest son's wisdom is greater than mine and shocks me. I'm like, wow.
great.
um, Extraterrestrial experiences.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. When I um, was a student at UW Whitewater, and then I was a student at UW Milwaukee. We were heavily into the Native American stuff, and they always talked about the star people. And there were
Mm,
a lot of experiences where I had my teacher came to me with star people, and then they would show me things. And we would do journey work, and sometimes the grays would show up. And there was, I definitely knew that they were working on me, because the feelings that I got with these out of body experiences is that, or they were somehow generated through some kind of technology, because I would hear computer noises like beep, beep, beep. I would hear things like bells and chimes
I
and music, and
Yeah.
like somebody had turned a radio on, and just it was very strong energy out there, and really did feel like I was being blasted with some kind of like energy to pull me out of my body. And what I realized is that if I would get away from my body, that electrical feeling would go away. So I would spin inside myself to get out. And then once I was away from my body, it would be quiet and it would be calmer. And when I would get scared, I get slammed back into my body. And it would be intense. And obviously you've had the same things happening. I see now.
I I'm like, "Oh my gosh," I'm just so giddy because I know exactly what you're talking about. It freaked me out so many times, like, before I understood what was actually happening, but yeah, and it's almost like you feel yourself pulling. You can feel, like, the
Yeah,
separation,
yeah.
and the first time, I was hitting the wall, like, "No, no, no, I'm not ready to go." I thought I was dying.
Well, yeah, it does feel like dying. You think you're dying, but then, like I would get scared, and I made rules about not getting pulled out. I'm like, you can give me information, but don't yank me out. I don't like it. And,
Right.
there were times where I would go through the wall, and I would see the layers of the wall, and I would get outside, and I would feel the coldness of the air. And I would shoot up, like really high in the air, until I was seeing that the earth was just a little blue dot. And I'm like, oh, I'm coming back. I got scared. Boom. And I'd be back in my body again, and it'd be like, wow, that's a lot. That
Wow.
is intense. But, I guess I was shown all of this for a reason, so I could have something to paint about, have something
Yeah.
to, like, discover. And I always felt like I would meet other people that had this happen to them too, because it couldn't just be happening to me. And so I felt like it was important to document. And
Oh,
I went
definitely.
through a huge evolution of coming from like Catholic school, and getting married really young, and being like in a Lutheran church, and then rebelling against religion altogether, and then diving into Native American culture and their spirituality, and seeing that that they knew about stuff. And, I was very reluctant about, like, learning about Native stuff. I was, like, not interested in that, and then, boom, it was exactly what I needed, and that opened my spiritual doors and gave me permission to go ahead and be okay with this. If this was a gift and not some imaginary thing. It was more real than reality.
Right. Did
Yeah.
you hear all that knocking?
Yeah. Was that
Spirits.
spirit?
I was like, wow, really? You're doing this like now?
Does somebody need to say something? Does
That's
somebody-
what I'm wondering. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Oh man, and we've hit over an hour.
We're 3:01 already.
It goes so quick.
Is that
I
the
really,
relativity?
yeah. We're only about halfway done, but would you like to do the other half maybe at a later time? We could schedule another and
Yeah, let's do it.
thank you. I really enjoyed this, and I've got to talk with you a bit behind the scenes, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So
But
I've
thank
watched
you.
your videos and I go, oh yeah, I know. Yeah. Like I could see that you were doing the same things and having the same things happen to you.
I
So,
love it. Well, you guys, I hope you've enjoyed this. I want to do this a lot more on my channel, but we'll talk about that a bit later. But I'm really excited to have you again, and thank you so much for coming on and just sharing your experiences.
thanks for not
Wow.
being mad about Real Sky anymore.
It was nothing. I can be stubborn too. But I told Rochelle, I think about half a week ago when I was starting to notice things, that I'm like, all right, I'm Scorpio Libra. How's that? She's like, look, you're gonna be a Scorpio in those systems no matter what. And I'm like,
That's
oh yeah,
right.
you're right. You're right. I am Scorpio Libra then. No, but
Oh my.
it
So
wasn't personal. It was more of a pride thing. So that damn ego sometimes, right, guys?
wrecks your persona a little. It changes your persona.
But
But
I'm
yeah,
excited
it just
to,
expands it. It just
yeah,
because you're the other side of that scale, where it's
right.
you have to make the balance for all the other things that are happening out there. You're the balance.
I love that. And yeah, we'll talk. And thank you for your work and the things you contributed to, because I can't wait to dive in and really kind of know the ins and outs of Real Sky. So I'm excited, and maybe we'll do something in the future about that too.
Okay.
So some of my viewers, I think, would be quite interested.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
I got nothing
Thank
going
you. And thank you guys so much for joining us. Does anyone have any questions for Julie before we go? And thank you, Robin, for subbing. Oh, hi, Ember. And looking forward to part 2. Me too. I'm like,
Yeah. Well, you guys have a way of digging all the junk out of me. The stuff I've been storing all these years and not telling anybody because it's too weird.
oh, well,
Put it on YouTube. Good
I
idea.
feel honored that you can, with me. I love that.
Well, I either say it now or it dies with me, so I better say it,
I
right?
love it. Yes. Here, I hope someone like 100 years from now in our technically advanced world looks and they're like, hey man, I heard YouTube was a thing once. Like, let's go
Let's
check out what our ancestors.
zap that girl.
Love it.
Uh,
All right. Well, you guys have a great evening, and we'll see you soon.
Okay.